Okay, I'm going to get started by just welcoming you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone joining us online as well. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, which I'll explain to you guys what that is once we get to it. We start class with meditation to be able to help you guys train your mind, because everything that we do here is to help you understand the path to enlightenment, and training your mind is part of that path. What the Buddha did is he shared with you how to train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any discontent feelings. All your anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all these feelings in others are completely eliminated from the mind. Oftentimes people think that it's other people who are causing you to experience these feelings, but these are actually being caused by your own mind. And you can eliminate the causes and conditions that are producing them, and then you won't actually need to experience these anymore, because it's very painful to experience these types of feelings. So I'm going to help you guys to be able to understand this aspect of the teachings of the Buddha as part of our Pali Canon and English study group when I explain to you guys what that is. But since we start with meditation, I'll introduce you guys to that first. The way that we do meditation is we start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. And if you'd like to do the chanting, you're more than welcome to. There's laminated sheets over there on the cabinet that has the chants that we do. When the Buddha did chanting during his lifetime, it was to help his students to remember the teachings, that every 2 weeks they would come together and they would recite his teachings word for word in order to commit them to memory, because the technology to write things down didn't exist during that time frame in that part of the world. So they used chanting just purely as a memorization tool, where today we don't need to do chanting in order to memorize the teachings, because we have books and audiobooks, videos and podcasts and things of this nature. But I still chant in order to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. But you can see from the origins of chanting that there isn't anything mystical or magical about chanting. It's not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. So if you decide to chant along, or as we chant along, it's helpful to understand that that's not the case, that this is just to help ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you read the English translations, by the way, thank you for passing those out. If you read the English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha in the actual chants. Because of this, I think that his students probably created the chants either during his life or after his death, because a Buddha wouldn't walk around and say, hey, chant these things to me out of respect for me, because that would be ego and that would be arrogance, and somebody wouldn't actually do that who was actually enlightened. And the Buddha was enlightened, so he wouldn't be actually trying to convince people to chant things to him out of respect to him. But if you learn from a teacher of how to move from the anger and the sadness and the frustration and all these other discontent feelings to the peace and the joy that is the enlightened mental state, and this teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of appreciation and gratitude for that person too. So that's why I suspect that these chants actually came from his students either during his life or after his death. So we're going to start with these chants, easing the mind into meditation. Then afterwards, I'm going to come in with some guidance to help you during the meditation, where I'll essentially be instructing you and guiding you in the meditation at the same time that you're actually doing the meditation. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet, where we're all meditating together. Everyone here at the temple, anyone who's joining us online, we'll just all be meditating at the same time. Now, I'm sure you're going to hear some sound in the environment, right? You can't be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. So you're going to hear a car go by, a bird chirping, maybe a dog barking, maybe someone coughs or sneezes here. These things are all impermanent, and as long as your mind isn't craving permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you can reside peaceful and joyful. But if you have a craving for permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you'll be frustrated or annoyed with that sound, because your mind is causing that itself, because it has this craving for permanence. So during that period of time where it's just quiet, I'm sure there's going to be an occasional sound here or there, and you can just understand that it is impermanent. So after that period of time where we're meditating. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught. He taught seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would use these different positions at different times, and you would need to learn them as part of your journey to enlightenment because you're going to need them at different times. But oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. So I'll give you guys some guidance on the seated position, but understand whatever I share with you is just something for you to consider. It's not that everybody has to sit in exactly the same position, because that's not actually possible. Because everybody's body is different and unique, we're going to find different things to be comfortable. So you find whatever's comfortable for you. And what I share with you here is just some suggestions that you might consider. Oftentimes people like to sit on the floor or on a chair. Some people like to sit on a bench or a sofa. Someone at home might be in a wheelchair or something like this. You can sit however you're comfortable. If you're on the floor, oftentimes people like to have cushions under their rear, so you might have some of those. And then if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you like those to just be lightly crossed, because if they're real tight, it will tend to impede the circulation in the lower body and it'll cause pain. So you could just bring your legs together in a light cross-leg position. Sometimes people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets the hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. So you could do that as well. In terms of your hands and arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. But there's other options here too, because it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. That's just not possible. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you find whatever's comfortable for you. And the same thing for anybody who's in a chair or on a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair or something like this. You can sit however you're comfortable. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles. But you can see me, I'm here in a chair with my legs crossed. So that's even an option too. And then the same thing with your hands and arms. You can just put them wherever you're comfortable. In terms of your upper body, it's helpful if this is erect with your sternum up and your shoulders back. This will keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. And you need the mind to be attentive and alert during this training, because if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because it'll help you train your mind with an attentive and alert mind. It'll also help you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to chant on the way in, which you guys are welcome to join in, and then I'll come back in with some guidance to help you. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Wat Tung Mahakavanang Apivateyami Sawakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa อิติปิโสมหะวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตูอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหะวาพุทธังมหะวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here at the temple. Welcome to everyone online as well. As I was mentioning, today is our Pali Canon and English study group where we study the original words of the Buddha. This is a program that students oftentimes will move into after they've developed a foundation in the path to enlightenment. We have various courses and classes and retreats and various programs here available to students, and it's all available to you at no cost. All of our books and audiobooks, videos, podcasts, even personal guidance, it's all available to you at no cost. And what I do is I help students to build a foundation in the path to enlightenment first. And the way that I do that is through this first book. It's titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. You can get this on our website by downloading it for free. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon because it's on there as well if you have access to Amazon. What this first book does is it really lays down a really nice foundation for you of understanding what the Buddha taught in terms of training your mind. Oftentimes people have been exposed to different things in the world, and people might even be considering these things Buddhist, but oftentimes they're not the true teachings of the Buddha. The words of the Buddha are what's going to help you to get to enlightenment, where he's teaching you how to train your mind to move it towards this enlightened mental state. What the Buddha did is he discovered these individual pollutions in the mind, and he discovered the tools and the techniques of how to eliminate them and eradicate them from the mind so that you can experience the peace and the joy of the enlightened mental state. As I mentioned, you will have eliminated all those discontent feelings. The mind will be performing optimally, that you'll notice there's focus, clarity, concentration, and deep deep memory in the mind. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming, because right now you probably have a certain amount of bitterness or hostility in some of your relationships, and this is what's coming from your own mind. You might think it's the other person that is the problem, but if you're being bitter and harsh and hostile through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, this is actually coming from your own mind. And you can transform this through the cultivation of wisdom, through learning and growing and developing on the path. You can get to the point where all your relationships are harmonious. You can get to the point where you don't even experience a bad mood any longer. And this doesn't come through belief. This doesn't come through rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship. So you're not believing any of the teachings of the Buddha. Instead, you're learning his teachings, investigating them, and examining them. You're reflecting on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you're practicing his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life in order to train the mind. So there's nothing here in the teachings of the Buddha that are about belief. You're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping that something good happens when you die. That's not what the Buddha taught. Because you're learning now, you're reflecting now, you're practicing now, you experience the results now in this life. He's guiding you how to create this ideal life for yourself, but it comes through training of your own mind. Oftentimes people think that the way they're going to experience improvement in life is to get other people to change. And that's not what the teachings of the Buddha are about. This is a path of this inner work for you to actually grow and develop within your own mind, and doing this inner work to eradicate certain pollutions that are in your mind. So the Pali Canon in English Study Group is a program that students oftentimes are moving into after they've already developed a foundation. And if this is your first time here, which I know many of you it is, it's okay. You're still going to learn plenty today, but just understand that this isn't where somebody will typically start their journey to enlightenment, that they will normally start in a foundational program or course or retreat or something like that to be able to understand the core and central teachings of the Buddha. The way that we do this program is I have these chapters in this book. There's 13 books in our book series, and the foundational text is volume 1. But then in the Pali Canon in English Study Group, we have volumes 2 through 13 that we spend our time going through those over a 1.5 year period. We're gradually making our way through that. Where the other programs for this particular book, it takes about 7 months to go through this chapter by chapter each week, helping students to gradually develop their understanding of the teachings. And then this Pali Canon English Study Group, each Saturday we meet, and the way that we do this program is I invite students here at the temple and anyone who's joining us on Zoom to be able to volunteer to read one of these chapters. This is the chapter that we're going to be studying to get started today, where you can see it's just really short. Actually, it's barely a paragraph, even though it's separated into these individual sentences. If you would like to read this as part of our class today, you can actually volunteer to read this. Then after someone reads it, I will share some teachings on that. Then we're going to open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to the chapter. If you would like to volunteer to read, or you have questions at any point here at the temple, if you guys could use the microphones in the white bowl there, that way the people online will be able to hear you. If you speak here without a microphone, the people online won't be able to hear you. So all you need to do is get a microphone, press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on. You can hold that up to your chin, and then they'll be able to hear you online. We'll be able to hear you here as well. And when you're not using the microphone, if you could turn it off, that would be great, because then we won't get feedback from the speakers. And you can keep the microphones with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share your microphone. For anybody who's online, if you would like to volunteer to read in Zoom, you can just electronically raise your hand and unmute your microphone, and we'll be able to hear you here. Then if you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom and you have a question, you can either put that in the comment section and I'll be able to see that, or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. So I'm going to walk you guys through this and see how we actually do this program to help you guys learn with the original words of the Buddha and what he actually taught, because then you'll know what he actually taught as the path to enlightenment. So would anybody like to volunteer to read this first chapter? Doche? Yeah. Are you able to get a microphone? Yep. There you go.
With the destruction of excitement, the mind is liberated. Seeing rightly, he experiences the fading away of strong feelings. With the destruction of excitement comes the destruction of craving. With the destruction of craving comes the destruction of excitement. With the destruction of excitement and craving, the mind is said to be well liberated.
Okay, thank you, Doche. So what the Buddha is talking about here is something called conditioned pleasant feelings. There's 3 feelings that the Buddha describes. He talks about pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. This is the problem that he discovered in the mind. This is how the mind experiences feelings based on some condition. The pleasant feelings are things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. You'll experience those feelings in the unenlightened state based on some condition, meaning if it's sunny outside, you'll get really happy perhaps. If you have a certain craving, desire, attachment for the sun, you will get so happy and excited when it's sunny outside. Or maybe your boss gives you a raise and you get so happy and excited. Oh, I'm getting more money. I'm getting a new job. I'm getting a new responsibilities. Or, oh, my mom just called me and she's going to come visit me this weekend. Ah, this is so exciting. Oh, it's going to be so fun to spend time with mom, right? You get so excited. This is based on a condition. Some condition has to be present and then you'll get excited. Maybe you get a new boyfriend or new girlfriend or something like that. You get excited. Ah, I got this new person in my life. Oh, it's going to be so wonderful. But then the problem with that is that condition that is producing that excitement, that conditioned pleasant feeling, it's not permanent. So since that condition is not permanent, your happiness and your excitement is not permanent either. So if you get really excited when it's sunny outside, well, that condition of the sun is not permanent. So your happiness is not permanent either. Your excitement is not permanent either. And that's why people aren't experiencing permanent happiness and permanent joy in the unenlightened state, because their mind is forming these inner feelings based on some condition. If you get so excited when your boss gives you a $20,000 raise, well, when they give you a $3,000 raise, you're going to be agitated or annoyed or frustrated. Same thing when the sun goes away. You'll be agitated or frustrated or annoyed. Or if your mom calls you up and says, hey, I can't come this weekend. I'm so sorry. Something came up. You'll be frustrated and agitated or annoyed, right? So your mind will go up and down like this. Or say you break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend. Now you'll be angry or frustrated or feeling lonely or bored, like you're missing this person. You might think it's actually your love that's causing those feelings. It's not love that's causing the painful feelings. It's the mind holding on and craving permanence. So as long as the mind is having this craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the wanting things to be a certain way, you'll be happy and excited when you get things your way and you get things the way you want. But when things aren't going your way, the way you want them to be, then you're going to be agitated or frustrated or annoyed. This is the mind causing its own discontent feelings. So what the Buddha helps you to be able to see is that you need to be able to see the conditioned pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. It makes a lot of sense to eliminate your anger, your sadness, your frustration, your irritation, your annoyance, and all these other painful feelings like guilt and shame and fear and stress and anxiety. It makes a lot of sense to eliminate those. But when we start talking about the elimination of conditioned pleasant feelings like excitement, people are like, whoa, hold on a second. That's the whole reason why I'm living, is like to get those feelings, right? That's what I've been chasing after all these years. Well, yeah, but that's also what's ending you up right back in the painful feelings. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be experiencing unconditioned happiness, unconditioned joy, where the mind can just always be happy and always be joyful. But you can't experience that unconditioned happiness and joy when you're continuing to allow the mind to experience conditioned pleasant feelings like excitement. Because as long as your mind forms that pleasant feeling based on the sun, well, when it's not there anymore, you're going to be angry or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. Or as long as you allow your mind to be happy based on the condition that mom is coming to visit you, well, mom's not always going to come visit you. Something's going to come up and she's going to change her plans, and now you're going to be agitated or frustrated. So you need to get to the point where you can enjoy the things that you're doing each day without having conditioned pleasant feelings. And this is what the mind doesn't know how to do in the unenlightened state. Because with craving, desire, attachment, the mind is chasing and chasing and chasing and chasing and chasing and wanting this thing in order to get pleasant feelings. It's almost like a person who's addicted to drugs or alcohol chasing a substance, and you're chasing those pleasant feelings. Maybe it's shopping or gambling or sex or money or some other thing. Maybe it's more jewelry or something like this. The mind chases and chases and chases after it. And then if you get what you want, you get happy or excited. But if you don't get what you want, then the mind is angry or frustrated or sad. So if you're chasing after things, you can only be happy if you get what you want. But if your mind is all the way over here on the other side, where you're dull and lethargic and you're not doing anything and you could care less about what's happening in the world, you're not going to feel peaceful and joyful there either. But there's this middle way that the Buddha taught, where you can learn how to train your mind to not form its inner feelings based on some condition. And you can learn how to enjoy things without having conditioned pleasant feelings. And this sounds really odd to someone who isn't familiar with this, because like, how could I enjoy something if I'm not getting those conditioned pleasant feelings? So this is something that the mind needs to learn how to do, is how to enjoy all aspects of life, and that your mind can be uplifted and bright and radiant and cheerful and glad no matter what's happening around you. But in the unenlightened state, the mind is going to keep forming its inner feelings based on these external things. So the Buddha here is just helping you to be able to see that in order to experience this fading away of strong feelings, there needs to be the destruction of excitement. What he's saying is destroying those conditioned pleasant feelings, where you no longer allow the mind to base its inner feelings on some condition. Because when you eliminate these conditioned pleasant feelings, that's where you're going to eliminate the underlying craving, desire, attachment, which is causing the mind to also experience those painful feelings. So the way that you do this is with your mindfulness or your awareness of mind, you become aware of the arising of conditioned feelings. And what you become aware of is something called the bodily sensations. This is part of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, that there's going to be these bodily sensations that are occurring before your mind forms a feeling. In terms of painful feelings, you might be aware of these. In terms of painful feelings, you might notice tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. You might have noticed this at different times. Before you got angry, you had these bodily sensations. Well, what the Buddha teaches you to do is cut those off and let them go. You're cutting off and letting go before the mind becomes angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. This is catching it well before the mind actually has a chance to form the conditioned feeling. It's not suppressing your feelings. It's actually cutting it off and eliminating it before the feeling actually forms. It's kind of like if you were in a boat going from Australia to Indonesia and you were out in the middle of the ocean, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water gets in the boat, you've got a real problem to deal with. You got to get it out. So if you can transform your mind to be able to notice the bodily sensations arising, and you can cut it off and let it go before the mind actually forms the conditioned feeling, over time you will transform your mind. So those bodily sensations are essentially like the early warning system that you have, where your mind is telling you, I'm about to form a conditioned feeling. I'm about to form a conditioned feeling. I'm about to form a conditioned feeling. And you say, nope, I'm not going to let you do that. And you restrain the mind and you pull it back. So this makes a lot of sense for the painful feelings, but you need to do exactly the same thing for the pleasant feelings. But those bodily sensations are oftentimes a lot more challenging to spot because the mind really enjoys it. If you've had the term warm fuzzies, oftentimes this is what some cultures call it, right? Where you've got those tingling sensations across your shoulders, up the back of your neck, over your skull, and then boom, the mind's now excited or happy. This is the bodily sensations associated with these conditioned pleasant feelings arising. And if you develop your mindfulness really well, you can notice those conditioned pleasant feelings starting to arise as just a bodily sensation. And it's when the mind's saying, hey, I'm about to form a conditioned pleasant feeling here, you can say, nope, I'm not going to let you do that. You need to be willing to eliminate the temporary happiness in order to get to the permanent happiness. You will never get to the permanent happiness if you keep allowing the mind to experience the temporary happiness. So you need to be willing to say, no, I'm not going to allow you to do that, and cut off and let go. And that's what's going to help you to destroy this underlying craving. Because when you destroy this underlying craving and cut it off and let it go, you're going to destroy these conditional pleasant feelings. When you destroy these conditional pleasant feelings and the underlying craving, this is where the mind is said to be well liberated. It's free. Because if you can only be happy when certain conditions are met, you're not free. Because it's like, if the weather is this, if my boss does this, if my bank account does this, if my parents do this, if my boyfriend or girlfriend does this, then I will be happy. But any other time, I'm not going to be happy. I'm going to be frustrated and agitated. This is conditional experiences. But when you wipe all of that away, you can be happy all the time. You can be cheerful all the time. You can be glad all the time. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to see that these conditioned pleasant feelings are just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. And when you're able to see that, you're able to then train your mind and transform it to be able to accomplish that. That's where your mind is free or liberated, because now you can just be happy all the time. And that's what enlightened mind is going to experience, where the mind is always joyful. It's unconditioned joy. You wake up joyful. All day long you're joyful. You go to sleep joyful. There's never a time where your mind is shaken up. It's impossible for the enlightened mind to experience any kind of anger, sadness, frustration, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, or any of these other very painful feelings. And that's because the individual has let go of the temporary happiness, and now they're experiencing the permanent happiness. So do you guys have any questions on this particular chapter? Let me know. You guys can use the microphones here. Anyone online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. Sorry, I just need to make a couple adjustments here. No questions? Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the next chapter. Yes, you have a question, sir? Yeah, if you would like to ask a question, go for it. There you go. Perfect.
You just talk about when you have a better idea that, and you will feel it comes. How to train yourself time to time to as you said, cut it off right away.
Sure.
Yes.
There's a core central teaching that the Buddha teaches called the Eightfold Path. This is part of those foundational teachings that I shared that a lot of students will already know before they move into this program. And in this core central teaching of the Eightfold Path, the Buddha helps you to understand the wisdom section, the moral conduct section, how we interact in the world through our moral conduct, and then the mental discipline section of how to discipline the mind and train the mind. And meditation is part of that discipline, where you're training in what we just did is breathing mindfulness meditation, where you're focusing your mind on the breath. And anytime the mind moves off the breath, you're cutting it off and letting it go and bringing the mind back to the breath. Well, there's three aspects of this mental discipline. It's called right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. In right concentration, you're learning about things like meditation and practicing singleness of mind, where you're just doing one thing at a time. In that meditation that we just did, the goal of that meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. The goal is actually to notice them sooner and sooner, and to cut them off and let them go easier and easier, so that now in your day-to-day life, you will have mindfulness or awareness of your mind. Because oftentimes people go through life without awareness of what's going on in their own mind. Their thoughts, their ideas, their feelings, what they're experiencing, they're just completely unaware of that. So the mindfulness is helping you to become aware of the mind. And that meditation of breathing mindfulness meditation is helping you to cultivate that. And then also practicing singleness of mind, where you can focus and have concentration on what's going on in your own mind. So that now in your day-to-day life, when you're noticing the arising of these feelings, and you'll be able to notice the bodily sensations more and more as you develop your mind with meditation. You'll be able to catch it sooner and sooner, because you'll notice the bodily sensations. And now if you've been training your mind in meditation, you can cut that off and let it go. Whereas if you haven't been training in meditation, you're going to have a very hard time to let go. You can think back if you've had a boyfriend or a girlfriend that your mind was holding on to really tightly. When you guys broke up, it was really hard at the end of that relationship because the mind was holding on. And maybe it was angry or feeling bored or lonely or missing this person. But at some point, couple of weeks, couple of months, whatever it was, the mind let go. And the mind was like, you know what, if he or she wants to be with another person, then so be it. Or if they would like to move to another part of the world, so be it. And your mind let go. And that's where you regained your peace and your joy. But as long as the mind was holding on, it couldn't experience peace and joy because it was, having these discontent feelings related to this relationship. So the unenlightened mind doesn't know how to let go. It craves permanence and it holds on. So it's a combination of things like meditation, practicing generosity where you're giving and sharing, which trains the mind to also let go, and things like this that are going to ultimately help you to be able to spot those arising of bodily sensations and be able to then cut them off and let them go. And this comes through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. One of the biggest myths about the life story of the Buddha is people think that he sat under a tree, he meditated, and then he instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. If you read his teachings and you understand enlightenment, and if you understand anything about your life, you can see anything you've accomplished has been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Whether it's learning to read and write a certain language, whether it's a certain job or profession, it's been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So if you gradually train your mind with the entire Eightfold Path and partially this mental discipline section, but also the others as well, this is what's going to help your mind to be able to spot the rising of these feelings and then be able to cut them off and let them go. Because the average mind doesn't know how to do that. It lacks wisdom of how to do that. Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So if you'd like to study that Eightfold Path, this first book is a good place to start. Also, I've recorded it many times on our YouTube channel, on our podcast, and things like this because I teach it all the time because it's such a core fundamental teaching that people need to learn. So you're more than welcome to dive into the resources and you'll be able to learn that Eightfold Path because that's what's going to really transform your mind. That is the path to enlightenment. And it's so important to use the original words of the Buddha because there's lots of different places that you could Google the Eightfold Path, but they're not actually sharing based on the original words of the Buddha. So these books and these book series and all the resources that I share, it's all based on the original words of the Buddha. So you can see what did he teach and what he didn't teach as well. So that way you'll be fully informed and you can experience real results in your life by learning and growing and developing on the path. Okay. Let's move to the next chapter then. We'll go to chapter 12. Looks like Yusuf would like to volunteer to read. Go ahead, sir.
A craving, desire, is the root of discontentedness. Whatever discontentedness arose in the past, all that arose rooted in craving, desire, with the craving, desire as its source, for craving, desire is the root of discontentedness. Whatever discontentedness will arise in the future, all that will arise rooted in craving desire, with the craving desire as its source, for craving desire is the root of discontentedness. Whatever discontentedness arises, all that is rooted in craving desire, has a craving desire as its source, for craving desire is the root of discontentedness.
Okay, thank you, Yusuf. So here, what the Buddha is helping you to be able to see is that any time your mind has been discontent, it's because of craving, desire, attachment. I'm sure you've been in arguments before where you've been adamantly trying to convince someone to stop doing what they're doing because they are making you angry. They are making you frustrated. And you might have been trying to convince that person to stop doing what they were doing. But that's the mind's lack of wisdom. The mind's living almost like in this delusion or this confusion, this misunderstanding. This is what the mind's experiencing in the unenlightened state, that it just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. It will firmly believe that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated. But when you understand that it's your cravings, it's your longing, your yearning, your wants, and your expectations, wanting everybody to do things in a certain way, your mind has that expectation that people will do things your way. This is also part of the mind's ego, where the mind thinks that I know the right way to do things in this world, and the way everyone else is doing it is the wrong way. And if people do it my way, I'll be happy. And if they do it some other way, I'll be angry or frustrated. But again, this is the mind's craving, desire, attachment. It's wants and expectations. And it's also the mind's ego, the arrogance, not realizing that there's more than one way to do things in the world. The mind will crave permanence in the unenlightened state. But the thing is that you live in an impermanent world. Everything around you is constantly changing. You live in an impermanent world, but yet the mind craves permanence. So you can look at a recent time where you've been angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed, because remember, these teachings aren't based in belief. You shouldn't be believing what it is that I'm sharing with you right now. But if you listen with eager ears and you pay attention to what I'm sharing with you, you can look into your own life and you can look at a recent situation where you've been angry or frustrated or annoyed, and you'll be able to independently verify that it's your own mind that's craving permanence that is causing these feelings. So maybe it was this morning or yesterday or last week where you were frustrated or agitated or annoyed. You can look at that situation with this fresh eyes. What was it that your mind wanted? What were you longing and yearning for? What were you expecting? And if you would have got what you wanted, you would have been happy or excited. But because you didn't get what you wanted, your mind was angry or frustrated or annoyed. If you can look at this and you can peer into this and you can see this, you can have a breakthrough to realize that every single time you've ever been angry or frustrated or any other discontent feeling, it's all coming from your own mind, all the way from birth. When you were first born, you were in your mom's womb. All of us were. We were hanging out. We were having a good old time. Mom was pumping in food into the umbilical cord. We were just hanging out all by ourselves. We were having a grand old time. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of impermanence came along. It was like, hey, you got to get out of here. Time to move, right? And we got pushed out into the world, or surgery brought us out into the world. And right away, we started crying because of our craving for that permanence. We did not like impermanence. The same way of saying your mind's craving permanence is to say that the mind does not like impermanence. So when we experience that change from being inside the womb to outside of the womb, right away we started crying. It wasn't love that caused that. That was the craving, desire, attachment, the longing, yearning, holding on to this, wanting it to be permanent. Then as we were growing up, Mommy, Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? Can I have chocolate and ice cream? They're like, sure, here you go. Here's some chocolate and ice cream. And we got, thank you so much. You're the best mommy and daddy ever, right? And we experienced that for a period of time. But at some point, we said, Mommy and Daddy, can we have chocolate and ice cream? Can I have chocolate and ice cream? And they said, no. And we said, you're the worst mommy and daddy ever, right? That's because our mind was craving that permanence. We thought chocolate and ice cream was permanent and we were going to get it every single time. And when we didn't get it, our mind was angry and frustrated and agitated or annoyed. It wasn't mom and dad that was causing that. It was our craving, our desire, wanting permanence. And as you've aged, you've experienced different times where your mind's been discontent, but yet the mind believes that it's other people that are causing this. And as long as you walk around with this false belief in your mind that other people are causing your anger and frustration, you'll walk around continuing to be angry, irritated, annoyed, having stress and anxiety for the rest of your life. But if you can take the time to peer into this and see true reality, that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, that's where you can actually do the transformation. You can train your mind to work to improve it. And that's what the Buddha is sharing with you here, is that all the discontentedness you experienced in the past, it was all from your craving, desire, attachment. No matter how adamantly you were arguing and believing that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated, it's coming from your own mind. It's coming from the longing, yearning, the craving, desire, attachment. Any discontentedness that you will experience in the future, because between now and enlightenment, you're going to experience some discontentedness. You can't just snap your fingers and instantly become peaceful and joyful. So any discontentedness you experience in the future, it's all rooted in craving, desire, attachment, the same exact thing. And whenever discontentedness is arising, even in the present moment, right now, if you're discontent, hearing that your mind is causing these feelings. Sometimes people don't even like to hear that because they want to stay in that belief that it's other people that are causing them to be angry and frustrated. They don't want to face reality that it's your own mind. The ego is oftentimes too strong. It doesn't want to admit that, yeah, there's some real inner work that you need to do here in this life. If you're experiencing anger and frustration and annoyment, there's certain things that your mind doesn't know about this world, and you're going to keep struggling and have difficulties if you continue to stay stuck in that lack of wisdom. So even in the present moment, if you're experiencing discontentedness, it's all rooted in your own craving, desire, attachment, the longing, yearning. And being able to see this very clearly is so eye-opening for you, and you can see true reality and actually apply real solutions to the real problem. But as long as an individual keeps believing that it's something external that's causing these feelings, what you'll tend to do is push people away, or you'll push a situation away. That's called aversion. You might have pushed away family members or friends or people like this out of your life, thinking that they were the problem. You might have been pushing them away, but you can see that they're not the problem, because even though you've pushed them away, your mind continues to experience anger, frustration, or annoyment. If they were the true problem and the cause of your problem, when you push them away, you'd be peaceful. But when you push people away, you still experience anger and frustration or annoyment. That doesn't say that they weren't doing something unwise, because surely they could have been doing something unwise, but they're not the ones who are causing your discontent feelings. So pushing them away doesn't actually solve your problem. The other thing you'll do when you don't understand that this craving, desire, attachment is the source and cause of your problem is you'll be bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, thinking that they're the ones who are causing you to be angry, and the mind is trying to fear them into doing things your way. And as long as you're doing this, you're going to have bitterness and hostility in your relationships, and people might choose to leave out of your life because of that. Or the third thing you might do when you don't understand this is you might put your expectations on people and try to control them and force them to do things your way. And people might be doing this to you too. So as long as you don't understand that it's your own mind's craving, desire, attachment that's causing these feelings, you'll continue to push people away. You'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile to people, and you'll put expectations on people, and you won't be able to live harmoniously with all beings around you. So that's the real power in understanding this, is that you can start transforming your mind and you can start transforming your life so that you can live harmoniously with all beings. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to see true reality here, but you need to be willing to peer into it and investigate it and independently verify it. And then start practicing to remove this craving, desire, attachments out of your mind, where your mind's no longer longing, yearning, and chasing after pleasant things, and realizing that there's this middle way where you can enjoy life and have this cheerful and glad and uplifted mind where you're happy all the time. Otherwise, you're going to be disgruntled and agitated and frustrated at different times during your life, and that's no fun. So do you guys have any questions on this one? Let me see if we have any questions online here. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions online. So let's go to the next one, which is chapter 13. Is there someone who would like to read this?
What one intends, one has a tendency towards. Monks, what one intends and what one desires, and whatever one has an obsession towards, this becomes a basis for the maintenance of consciousness. When there is a basis, there is a support for the establishing of consciousness. When consciousness is established and has come to growth, there is the production of future renewed existence. When there is the production of future renewed existence, future birth, aging and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair come to be. Such is the cause of this whole mass of discontentedness.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So the Buddha's journey to enlightenment starts out with what's called the four observations. That when he went out into the kingdom, because he was sheltered in the palace for 29 years, that he didn't go outside into the kingdom. He was a prince destined to become a king. He was interested to see what was going on in the kingdom because he knew he was about to become the king, because at this time frame, you would become the king at the age of 30. And your dad would retire, and now they would be there to help you along the journey. When he went out into the kingdom, he saw these four observations. He saw an aging person, a sickly person, he saw a dead corpse, and he saw a roaming ascetic, someone who was on the path to enlightenment. And when he saw this aging person, sickly person, and dead person, he saw this grief and misery and despair around them. And he didn't understand what this was all about, because if his life in the royal palace, he had everything you could imagine. You know, he had royal riches and great food and entertainment and fabrics for clothing and women bathing him and all these kinds of things. And when he went out in the palace and he saw that people were struggling in life, that they had difficulty sustaining their life through acquiring basic resources to sustain their life, he looked at the world as miserable, and he looked at it as people were in grief and sorrow and despair. And he wasn't interested in ruling over this grief and misery and despair, so he decides that he's going to go off on this journey to figure out why people keep experiencing aging, sickness, and death over and over and over again, and this sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. What he ultimately figures out is that the mind is craving permanence, that because people are craving permanent youthfulness, when they're aging, they experience grief and despair, because the mind is craving this permanent youthfulness. But now as the body ages and is kind of older and decrepit and doesn't move around as easily, there's maybe wrinkles and gray hair and a little bit of fat here and there, that the mind is disgruntled. And then when people are sick, they're craving permanent health of the body. And now when they're craving that permanent health, they're experiencing this impermanence of sickness. And now the mind has difficulties and struggles with that. And then when an individual is experiencing death, they're craving permanent life. And because they're craving permanent life, as they get closer and closer to death, they're holding on to this world, not willing to let go. And now they really struggle as they're getting closer to death. And not only do you experience that for yourself, but the people around you. When mom or dad or brothers or sisters or other people like this are experiencing aging, sickness, or death, you might be experiencing this grief and sorrow and despair as well. So the Buddha discovered what is causing that in the present moment, but he also discovered that the same cause of craving, desire, attachment is what's producing birth. That as long as the mind has craving, desire, attachment, then there's going to be a birth. Because right now you might be believing that you only have one life, but the Buddha discovered that there's a cycle of rebirth here, that you continue to experience rebirth over and over and over and over again. And it's the craving, desire, attachment, holding on to this world that causes the mind to continue to come back in this world over and over and over and over and over again. And this can actually be independently verified too. Like I mentioned, right now, you might be believing that you only have one life, but you don't have any evidence that you only have one life. It's just something that either you convince yourself to believe or other people convince you to believe it. But you can actually peer into this. And in the book series, I provide 17 different criteria of how you can independently verify the cycle of rebirth. So the same thing that's causing discontentedness, that craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, that's also what's causing rebirth. The way you can think about it is craving, desire, attachment is the fuel. And just like a fire has logs, and if those logs are the fuel, it's going to send off sparks into the air, and it's going to be carried by the wind, and then it's going to land, and it's going to ignite a new fire. It's the same thing that in your mind, if there's this craving, desire, attachment, that's the spark, that's the fuel, that's what's causing this new existence, this new mind to be created. So when you're extinguishing your craving, desire, attachments in this life, you'll see that your mind's becoming more and more peaceful. Because in situations where you were once angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed, you'll have those same types of experiences in same situations, and you'll see your mind's quite peaceful in those situations. And that's how you know your mind's getting closer and closer to enlightenment. So as your mind is getting closer and closer to enlightenment through extinguishing these cravings, this burning desire for things to be a certain way. Now, as your mind's becoming more peaceful and more joyful, you'll know that you're also extinguishing the causes and conditions that are leading to this rebirth. Because what the Buddha discovered is that as long as there's birth, there's going to be aging and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. You can't escape that. As long as you continue to experience birth, you will continue to experience aging, death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. But if you train your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, you can escape that. In this life, you can get to the point where you don't have sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. And having done so, you'll know that there isn't going to be a new birth where you'll continue to experience those things. So every single being that is born, you're being born unenlightened. You're being born with craving, desire, attachment. That's why we come out of the womb crying. Wee, because we have craving, desire, attachment from the very beginning of our life. That's what led to this new birth. And as long as we had craving, desire, attachment in the last life, when we end up in this life, then there's craving, desire, attachment right there in the mind from the very beginning, and is why we continue to have discontentedness. It's when we extinguish our craving, desire, attachments in this life that we will get to the peace and the joy. And then part of that is that you'll know that you're not going to experience rebirth to be able to then experience aging and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair over and over and over and over again. So that's what the Buddha's guiding you to be able to do, is to not have some kind of pleasant afterlife. He's teaching you how to get to a wonderful life now in this life. And then having got to that wonderful life and that training of your mind, you'll know that there's not going to be any rebirth for you to continue to experience this sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair over and over and over again. So he's helping you to understand that through here, that he's saying when there is a basis, there is support for the establishing of consciousness. And here in a moment, if we get to the chapter, you're going to see where he says it very clearly that craving, desire, attachment is the fuel that causes rebirth. So do you guys have any questions on this one here? Doche? Yeah.
Looking at this one, I have a question around kind of maybe you can help me understand. It looks like it's talking about dependent origination, but it's hitting on a few points of dependent origination, like the intention and then craving and then the rebirth. So I'm just wondering, I guess, is this an introductory talk on dependent origination, or is it just point? I'm kind of trying to figure that out.
Yeah, because dependent origination is the highest, most ultimate truth of the teachings of the Buddha, which are 12 interlinking steps that helps you to be able to see what is leading to this continuous discontentedness and this continuous rebirth. Everything that he taught in one way or another is coming back to dependent origination, because that's the encapsulating teaching that is helping you to be able to see the full picture of what's really going on. So yeah, he's kind of peering into that and kind of helping you to be able to see that, but every single aspect of his teachings is doing that in one way or another, because it all comes back to that, those 12 interlinking steps. And what you're doing is you're dismantling that and destroying it. And that's what's going to get you to the peace and the joy. So yeah, what you're seeing is accurate. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go to the next chapter. By the way, what you guys have here is you have the words of the Buddha. This is from him. This is a reference which takes you back to the original source teachings. And the original source teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali Canon. It's 45 volumes that are about this thick. So you can take this reference and go back and see that this is actually from the original teachings. Then you've got words from me that are helping you to be able to understand how to integrate this into your life and fully flush it out to be able to reflect on it and gain benefit from the teaching of the Buddha. So this is what you have in each one of these chapters. So this is chapter 14. This is a really short one. Would someone like to read this? This is great for someone who would like to practice their English and practice not being so shy all the time. An enlightened being isn't shy. And one of the ways to break through that is to put your mind in the situation to actually break through the shyness. Would anybody like to read this? Yeah. You like to practice your English?
Do not favor existence, not even for the lasting of a finger snap. Monks, just as even a small amount of dung has a full smell. So likewise, I do not favor existence even for an insignificant amount of time, not even for the lasting of a finger snap.
Okay, thank you, sir. So here, what the Buddha is saying is that dung, what this is feces or excrement or poop. That's what that is. He's saying even a small amount of it, even a trace amount of it, has a foul smell. And he's saying so too, any kind of existence, even for an insignificant amount of time, he doesn't favor this. And what this is actually helping you to be able to see is that by existing, by being in life, in the unenlightened state, you're going to experience aging, sickness, death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. Getting to enlightenment, you won't experience those things any longer. You'll still experience aging and sickness, and there is ultimately going to be a death, but we don't actually refer to it as death because it's actually final enlightenment is what we refer to it as. But nonetheless, existing in the world, coming into the world, being reborn into the world, the Buddha is saying he doesn't favor this. And where this is really helpful for you is that there's some places out there that will teach you that the ultimate goal of the Buddhist teachings is to be reborn over and over and over again. There's the whole idea of a bodhisattva. You might have heard this at different times, that people think that they're taking a vow to then be able to come back into the world and help others to be able to get to enlightenment. This isn't what the Buddha actually taught. The idea that you're going to come back into the world to help others get to enlightenment, how could you ever help others get to enlightenment if you haven't gotten to enlightenment yourself? It's kind of like, could you teach someone else how to drive a car if you've never driven a car ever in your life before? So the idea of delaying your enlightenment and not getting to enlightenment yourself in order to then help other people to get to enlightenment, this is actually untrue. It's not what the Buddha taught. And you can see that in this very short, simple teaching that he's saying he doesn't favor existence. But some places in the world, they will teach you that the ultimate goal is to not get to enlightenment in this life and come back into the world and help others get to enlightenment. And this is, they refer to it as a bodhisattva. And this is not something that the Buddha actually taught. And you can see it in his own words here. So the goal is for you to train your mind, get to enlightenment, escape the cycle of rebirth, enjoy this wonderful life in this enlightened mental state. That's what the Buddha did, and that's what he taught other people to do too. He didn't teach you to delay your enlightenment, otherwise that's what he would have done. But no, in order for him to be able to help others get to enlightenment, he had to first get to enlightenment so he could understand how to do it. And once he figured out how to do it, then he was able to help other people to be able to do it. So let me know if you guys have questions on this one here. Any questions? Okay, I don't see any questions. So let's go to this next one. Oops, this is chapter 15. This is what I was just referring to. Would someone like to read this one? Rachel, you got it? Sure. Oh, you got it? Sure. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Craving is the fuel of rebirth. I declare Vajja rebirth for one with fuel, not for one without fuel. Just as a fire burns with fuel, but not without fuel. So Vajja, I declare rebirth for one with fuel, not for one without fuel. Master Gotama, when a flame is flung by the wind and goes some distance, what does Master Gotama declare to be its fuel on that occasion? When Vajja, a flame is flung by the wind and goes some distance, I declare that it is fueled by the wind. For on that occasion, the wind is its fuel. And Master Gotama, when a being has laid down his body, but has not yet been reborn in another body, what does Master Gotama declare to be its fuel on that occasion? When Vajja, A being has laid down his body, but has not yet been reborn in another body. I declare that it is fueled by craving, for on that occasion, craving is its fuel.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So what we were just saying here, and I was just explaining, is that it's craving, desire, attachment that causes discontentedness, any of those conditioned feelings. That's what's causing it, is craving, desire, attachment. But that's also what's causing rebirth as well. Because with craving, desire, attachment, the mind is holding on, wanting things to be a certain way. And as long as the mind is holding on and holding on and holding on, it's going to continue to experience discontentedness over and over and over again. But it's also going to keep experiencing rebirth over and over and over again. If there are certain parts of your life that keep being experienced over and over and over again, maybe you keep having the same situations come up over and over and over again, that's because the mind hasn't cultivated the wisdom that it needs to understand how to overcome that obstacle in your life. So if you keep having friends leave you over and over, if you keep having people steal from you, if you keep having broken relationships over and over, if you keep finding it very challenging to have a life partner and you keep experiencing the same problems over and over and over again, this is because the mind's stuck in this continuous cycle over and over and over again. But you can break out of that through cultivation of wisdom. Through the cultivation of wisdom, you will learn how to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, and that's what will help you to break out of this cycle. So that's what the Buddha is helping you to be able to do. And here he's using this particular analogy, this question that his student's asking him, where he's talking about the wind in its a flame as kind of being fueled by this wind as it's being carried by the wind. Because this is the way the Buddha would teach, is that he would wait for a student to ask him questions. He didn't just go out into the world and give people unsolicited advice, right? That's sometimes what the unenlightened mind does with its craving, desire, attachments, with its ego. You might go out into the world and give people unsolicited advice. They didn't even ask you for any advice, but you're kind of telling them what they should or shouldn't be doing in life. That's the mind's ego that's choosing to do that. But what the Buddha would do is he would wait for students to ask him a question. And then when the students would ask him a question, he would then teach. So the students asking him like, hey, what's the fuel for this flame that's being flung by the wind? He's like, it's the wind that is the fuel. Okay, well, what about when someone dies, but yet they haven't been reborn yet into a new body? He's saying, okay, it's craving, desire, attachment that is the fuel for that. And you can independently verify this. Like if you think about when you get really angry and frustrated, you feel that heat in your face, the heat in the body. That's because it's like a fire burning. You've got that fuel in the mind, and now you're feeling that heat rise up in the body because there's that fire burning of craving and anger. And then also we refer to it as ignorance or unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom. So it's this craving, desire, attachment that is causing the mind to be discontent, and it's also causing it to experience rebirth. So it's kind of like if a 2-for-1 special, right? If you eliminate craving, desire, attachment from your mind, not only will you get to the peace and joy in this life, but you'll know that there's not going to be a rebirth. And this is one of the beauties about the teachings of the Buddha, is that it's not about believe, and hope something good happens when you die. Because you're eliminating your cravings, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning in this life, you can actually see that the mind's becoming more and more peaceful. You have tangible proof in this life that you're headed in the right direction through learning and practicing his teachings, because you'll see the mind becoming more and more peaceful, because as you're knocking down this craving, there's no longer that fire burning. The fuel is starting to be extinguished, so that fire isn't burning. But you can learn how to make wise decisions to progress forward in life, where right now you might be going forward in life and being motivated by your passions and your desires and your longing and yearning and chasing after certain things. But all that stuff gets extinguished. That's why you might have had a passion to do a certain job, and you did it really strong and very, very strong with a lot of passion, but then it burned out and you ultimately felt bored or lonely. Or you might have had a certain hobby or activity that you had a certain passion for, and you really drove yourself towards it. But then eventually that burned out and you gave up on it. right? This is because the craving was extinguished, where what you can learn to do is how to pursue things as a goal, objective, or interest, not as a burning passion. Sometimes people think that that's a good quality to have, is have this burning passion. Well, if you're doing that, that's going to burn out. It's not sustainable, and you're eventually going to give up on that particular thing. But also, if you're over here on the other side where you're dull and lethargic, you're not pursuing anything at all. So that's where you need to learn how to come to the middle way, where you're gradually working towards goals, objectives, or interests, and then you're making your way towards that through wise decision making. Like the Buddha himself, he discovered these teachings. He knew that someday they would reach the entire world, and he gradually, slowly but surely, from the age of 35 to 80, for 45 years, he made wise decisions to share these teachings into the world. He didn't have this burning passion to do it, because then it would have burned out, right? But for 45 years, he was able to sustain this ability to share the teachings into the world. And here we are still talking about them because they're so impactful and they actually work. So if you're going to have longevity in your career, if you're going to have longevity in your relationships, if you're going to have longevity in any aspect of your life, you're going to need to have wise decision making where you gradually make your way towards a certain goal, objective, or interest, and you're not pursuing it with this craving or this passion, because that's what's going to burn out, and it's ultimately going to leave you feeling unsatisfied in that situation. When your passion and your cravings are burning strong and you're getting all those pleasant feelings, you'll really like that. But eventually that's going to lead to the painful feelings, and you're not going to like it anymore. And that's where it's going to burn out. And now you're left, with that burned out craving, and now maybe feeling exhausted even. But there's this middle way where you can have your mind be uplifted, and you can have brightness and radiance. You can have a sustaining energy all through your day to continue to go forward towards certain goals and objectives that you're working towards. So do you guys have any questions on this, where the Buddha is explaining that craving is the fuel that causes rebirth? Any questions? Okay. You have a question? Yes, ma'am. Just takes a second to engage.
It does. Okay.
There you go.
Vacha is the name of the person that he's talking to?
Yes, this would be his student's name that he's describing, that he's talking to.
Okay.
He taught in Northeast India, so the names are come from that region of the world. He was born in what we refer to as Nepal, and then he taught in Northeast India. It wasn't described that way during his lifetime. They were just kingdoms, but that's the region of the world. So you'll get names that are similar to that region of the world. Okay, let's see what the next one is. Let me see here. Lots of stuff here that I was describing. Okay, let's read this one, and this will be our last chapter for today. Would anybody like to read this one? Nobody? We can make that other one the last one too. Anybody like to read this one? You like to read again? Yeah, go for it. Here's some dependent origination, Doche. You'll be able to see it really clearly here.
With gratification, craving increases. Suppose, monks, a great bonfire would...
The batteries are impermanent. Yeah, you can just grab another one.
Yeah. With gratification, craving increases. Suppose, monks, a great bonfire was burning, consuming 10, 20, 30, or 40 loads of wood, and a man would cast dry grass, dry cow dung, and a dry wood into it from time to time. Thus, sustained by that material, fueled by it, that great bonfire would burn for a very long time. So too, when one lives dwelling in gratification of things that can be clung to, craving increases. With craving as condition, clinging comes to be. With clinging as condition, existence. With existence as condition, birth. With birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair comes to be. Such is the cause of this whole mass of discontentedness.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So the Buddha is a real expert at showing this cause and effect relationship between things. That's what he's exposing you to, is this natural law of Gama, this cause and effect, or action and result. Some people refer to this as karma, but in the Pali text, it's referred to as Gama. If it translated to just one English word, I would just use that because it'd be easier for everyone. But this word Gama means cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's not about who's to blame or who's at fault. It's none of those kinds of things. It's not even punishments and rewards. There's no being who's overseeing this. It's literally cause and effect. That if this thing exists, then this thing comes to be. It's a sequence of events that is occurring. So what he's talking about here is that as long as your mind continues to seek gratification and external things, then your craving is going to continue to arise. If you've ever experienced like purchasing something and now you purchase something small, that gives you pleasure for a period of time, but then you want something bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. This is how economies are really driven, that it's like you start out with a certain size house, then you want a bigger one and a bigger one and a bigger one, and the mind just keeps wanting more and more and more and more and more. And there's never ending thirst. There's a never quenching thirst that the mind just continues to crave more and more and more and more. So if you chase after gratification, and that's what it is that you're chasing after, then you're never going to actually be satisfied, because you can only experience pleasant feelings while you have that thing. And then when that wears off, you want a bigger thing, or you want more things, or you want something else. So as long as you're chasing after gratification, then craving is just going to increase. And whenever there's craving that is increasing, then your mind's going to cling. That's what the Buddha is saying here. Clinging is holding on. Craving is the longing, yearning for something external. The clinging is then holding on to it. So think about a boyfriend or girlfriend. And maybe one time your mind really craved a boyfriend or girlfriend. You were longing, yearning. You're just thinking, that's going to make my life so much better if I have a boyfriend or girlfriend. Let me just get one of those. That would be so great. And then at some point you actually got a boyfriend or girlfriend. And then once your craving was satisfied, you started clinging to this person and holding on to them. And now when you were clinging and holding on to them, the mind experienced these discontent feelings. If we jump over all this stuff, that's where the mind now experiences the sorrow, the grief, the pain and displeasure, because you're holding on to this, wanting this person to be a certain way, craving the permanence. What the Buddha is talking to you here about is he's helping you to be able to see that this same craving and clinging that leads to discontentedness, it also leads to existence in this world. It leads to birth. It leads to aging and death, right? So this is like him showing you the detailed work. If you've ever had a math teacher where you just put like an answer on a piece of paper and they're like, hey, show me your work. And it's like, I already know how to do it. There's the answer right there. Well, the answer is craving leads to discontentedness. That's what is the answer. But what the Buddha is doing here is he's showing you the detailed work of how craving leads to clinging, clinging leads to continued existence, which then is going to lead to birth. As long as there's birth, there's going to be aging and death, and then there's sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair is going to come to be. That's how this whole massive amount of discontentedness continues in your own mind, is from the craving. And these are things that you can independently verify, as I mentioned to you. So it's this gratification that the mind keeps chasing after. It keeps chasing those pleasant feelings. This is where we started out our conversation this morning when we first started with the first chapter, is that it's the mind longing, yearning, wanting those conditioned pleasant feelings. And you need to be willing to let go of the temporary happiness in order to get to the permanent joy, the permanent cheerfulness, the permanent happiness. Do you guys have any questions on this chapter? No questions? Okay. So what I'm going to do then is just end by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for coming to learn. Thank you for being willing to volunteer to read and ask questions and all these kinds of things. As you guys learn and practice these teachings, if that's what you decide to do, it's the very best thing you could ever do for your life, because it's really difficult to stay in a life where you're continuing to experience anger and sadness and frustration and irritation and annoyance, all this guilt and shame and fear over and over and over again. There's an escape for you. There's a way to get out of this. And I've removed all the obstacles that you don't have anything in your way in terms of financial obligations or anything like that. Even you don't even have to be here in Chiang Mai because we live stream now. So the only thing that's holding you back from being able to get to the peace and the joy is your own dedication and your own determination to be able to dive in and actually see what it's going to take to actually improve the condition of your mind. So if you guys would like to experience the peace and joy of enlightenment, there's help for you here with all the ability to be able to help guide you to that enlightened mental state. In terms of our classes, tomorrow is our group learning program where we start out on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. And that's a more foundational program. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to be sharing the very beginning, very first teaching of the Buddha called the Four Noble Truths, where in 4 simple statements, you can understand the problem in your mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. This is where you can have a real breakthrough to understanding what's causing the mind to experience what it's experiencing so that then you can actually fix it. That's where people will typically start in a class like that, where you can learn the very first, very beginning teaching. And I'm going to walk you through in a way that you can independently verify what it is. And it's going to be a more traditional style of learning where I'll be teaching for 15, 20, 30 minutes, opening up for questions, 15, 20, 30 minutes, opening up for questions. This is the only class that I do like this, which is more of a study group. Then on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing meditation with students. We'll be doing loving kindness meditation, which is helpful to help you eliminate your anger, your frustration, your irritation, your annoyance. Right now, you might have certain people in your life that you like and certain people that you dislike. That dislike is actually coming from your own mind. It's not from the other person. Your mind has certain expectations of people, wanting them to be a certain way. And if they meet your expectations, you like them. But if they don't meet your expectations, you might dislike them. And now you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards them. But this is coming from your own mind, and you can transform this. So on Wednesday, I'm going to be sharing loving kindness meditation with you guys and opening up to any and all questions that you have, because that's the meditation that's going to transform your mind to be more loving and kind in the relationships that you have. Because there's probably certain relationships that you're challenged in, probably your parents, your brothers and sisters, maybe your life partner, if you have children. Oftentimes people are very challenged in these relationships, but you can change all of that through training of your mind. So I'm going to be doing that with students on Wednesday. So whatever you guys decide to do, perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. You guys take care and be well. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Chai chien.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.